Hello, Algebra class, and welcome to this video of talking about section 7.4 in your textbook, which is solving polynomial equations. We're going to be spending a few days on this, so I just want to give you a little brief introduction, something to refer to when necessary, and something to build upon when we get back from our long weekend. So early in the year, we looked at something called the zero product property. Okay, the zero product property is named very appropriately because it's talking about how when two or more things multiply together to get zero, one of them has to be zero. And we saw this back in the beginning of the year when we did our inequalities, and we had a bunch of things that multiplied together to get zero, and we found all of those, and we had to test regions and stuff. So hopefully you remember that, as that's going to come back into play. Is instead of solving inequalities, we're now actually going to solve equations, which will actually prove to be a little easier. All right, so simple example, let's say I have these three things here that are multiplying together to get zero. I have 5, 4, and x. The only way this product is going to be zero is if one of them is zero. Now, I am certain it's not 5, and I'm certain it's not 4. So the only thing that could be zero is x. So the solution to this equation, x has to be zero. See? Simple. All right. Let's try the second one. Here I have two things that are multiplying together to get zero. One of them has to be zero. It's not this one. So the only possibility is that x plus 7 is zero. And if x plus 7 is zero, and I solve for x, I get x is negative 7. All right. Let's try 3. In number 3, again, I have two things that multiply together to get zero. It could be that x is zero. It also could be that x minus 5 is zero. And if x is zero, okay, that's one solution. X could be zero. I would get 0 times negative 5, which is in fact zero. The other possibility is that the other factor, x minus 5, is zero. And if that's the case, then x is 5. And if x is 5, I would get, let me just erase this. I would see that 5 times 5 minus 0, or sorry, 5 minus 5, which is 0. 5 times 0, yep, that's 0. So that works too. So I have two solutions to this equation. Either x is 0 or x is 5. Okay. In this next problem, again, I have two things that are multiplying together to get 0. It could be this factor, x plus 3 could be 0. It could be this factor, x minus 2 is 0. If it's the first one, then I get x is negative 3. If it's the second one, I get x is 2. If x is negative 3, I would get 0 times negative 5, and yep, that's 0. If x is 2, I would get 5 times 0, and yep, that's 0 too. So they both work. Okay, for the fifth one, here I have two things multiplying together to get 0. They just turn out to be the same thing. So I actually don't need to check both factors. Because whatever I get for the solution to the first one, I'm going to get as a solution to the second one too. So if 32 plus 4x is 0, then x is negative 8. So I only get one answer here. Another way to look at this, let me try to look at this another way, solve it a little bit more conventionally. What I could do is take a square root of both sides. And the square root of 0 is 0. And the square root of 32 plus 4x squared is 32 plus 4x. And then it turns into a chapter 1 equation. Either way, I get x is negative 8. All right. For the last problem, you can see I have three things that multiply together to get 0. I could have this first factor be 0, in which case I get x is 3. The second factor could be 0, in which case x is 7. Or the third factor could be 0. which case x is 2. So I get 3 possible answers. X is 3, x is 7, or x is 2. If you foiled out these things, if you multiplied, and there's no way to multiply 3 things at a time, so you'd have to multiply this binomial times this binomial, you get a trinomial, multiply that by this binomial, and you'd get a a polynomial with 4 terms. It's actually degree 3. And if you remember, degree 3 means there are 3 solutions when you set it equal to 0, or at most 3 solutions. And here are the 3 solutions. All right. This one's a little different. This one is not written the same way as the others. It's not written in what's called factored form. Okay. All of these problems are written in factored form. Factors are things that multiply together. So you can see clearly the things that multiply together to get 0. Okay. This one isn't. So how would I rewrite this so that it's in factored form? Just imagine I did some distributing. And after I did some distributing, I ended up with that side, x squared minus 6x. What would I have to distribute? What term or what expression is in both of these that it got distributed to 2 different things? It's an x. Because the first term has an x. In fact, it has 2 of them. The second term has an x. It's minus 6x. So if I distributed an x, what did I distribute the x to? In order to get x squared, I had to distribute it to another x, because x times x is x squared. What did I distribute the x to get negative 6x? Well, minus 6. All right. So I basically did the distributive property in reverse. I undistributed it. We really are going to call it factoring. I looked to see what term, or what's the greatest common factor of these 2 terms. They both have an x, and so I pulled that out. And then I asked, okay, after I pull out the x, what's left after I pull out an x from x squared? I'm still left with 1x. What's left after I pull out an x from minus 6x? A minus 6. Okay, why did I do that? Now it's written in factored form, and I can rewrite my equation as x times x minus 6 is equal to 0. So this is what we call factored form. Okay. Now this equation is ready to be solved the same way we solved the others. I have 2 things multiplied together to get 0. So one of them has to be 0. It could be that x is 0. It also could be that x minus 6 is 0. And if x minus 6 is 0, then that means that x is 6. So my 2 answers are 0 and 6. All right, let's try another one. Again, I'm going to undistribute this expression. I'm going to find out the factored form of that expression. So what do these 2 terms have in common? Yeah, they have an x in common. They also have a 5 in common. Do you see how 5 is a common factor of both 25 and 10? If you didn't pull out the 5, it's not a big deal. That won't lead you to getting the question wrong. It's more important that you pull the x out. But pulling the 5 out will just make things a little easier in the end. Okay, so what do I multiply 5x by to get 25x squared? I need another 5 to get up to 25 and another x to get to x squared. What do I multiply 5x by to get to 10x? Just a 2. Not another x, otherwise I get another x squared. So 5x times 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. And now I'm ready to solve because I'm in factored form. I have 1, 2, 3 things that are multiplying together to get 0. So one of them has to be 0, and it's not 5. So either x is 0 or 5x minus 2 is 0. Don't be afraid of fractions. Here, if I solve this, I get x is equal to 2/5. So my 2 answers are either x is 0 or x is 2/5. Right. We have a lot more work to do with solving polynomial equations, but figure this is a start and a good way to start a long weekend.